Welcome, guys. Glad to have you here. Um, I tried to do this reading yesterday, but I forgot to. For some reason, the stream didn't work. I don't know if I just didn't press go live or something, so I thought I was streaming, but I wasn't. Um, so we're going to do this, round 2 of the last few chapters of Treasure Island. So it's good to be with you this morning. Happy Tuesday. I'm going to probably turn off my webcam so we can just focus on the book. Plus, it's a little blown out or overexposed, so it doesn't look that good anyways. So I'm just going to turn that off, and then we can focus just purely on the reading. You can follow along. So before we start, though, let's recap what we read, where we left off. All right? And we can kind of look at this picture right below our chapter 32 title, The Voice Among the Trees. We left off with Long John Silver and Jim talking with the doctor, and them making a truce, and we learned that Jim saved Long John's life, and then they got the treasure map from them. So right now, and so they got the treasure map, and they were going out and hunting for the treasure, and they ended up finding a skeleton, and it was Flint. Remember, the last chapter was Flint's pointer. And why was it called Flint's pointer? Well, we learned that the skeleton was pointing towards where the treasure was. That's why it's called Flint's pointer. But the pirates were also very superstitious and scared because they couldn't find Flint's knife or his tobacco box. And so they were worried that Flint was a ghost and the ghost was among them. And so they were very superstitious and scared at this point. And that's where we left off. So they're out searching for the treasure. And also, I want to remind you all, or not remind you, but I want to let you guys know that the questions for this chapter are down below in the description. So you can scroll down to the description and look at the specific questions that you might be asked for your chapter study questions. You won't be asked to answer all of them, but the questions will be pulled from those questions. So you can read those questions, get a sense in your mind of what you should be looking for to be able to help you prepare for the chapter study questions. All right, so let us jump into chapter 32. We only have 3 more chapters of this book. All right, so The Voice Among Trees. Partly from the influence of this alarm, partly to rest Silver and the sick folk, the whole party sat down as soon as they had gained the brow of the ascent. Before us, over the treetops, we beheld the cape of the woods fringed with surf. Beheld, we looked down on the anchorage in Skeleton Island and the open sea. Sheer above us rose the spyglass. There was no sound but the distant breakers and the chirp of countless insects. There was not a sail upon the sea. The very largeness of the view increased the sense of solitude. Silver took bearings with his compass. There are 3 tall trees, said he, about on the right line from Skeleton Island. It's child's play to find the stuff now. I've half a mind to dine first. I don't feel sharp, growled Morgan. Thinking o' Flint, I think it were, as done me. Praise your stars he's dead, said Silver. He were an ugly devil, cried a third pirate, with a shudder. Blue in the face, too. That was how the rum took him, added Mary. Blue? Well, I reckon he was blue. Ever since they had found the skeleton, they had spoken lower and lower, and they had almost got to whispering. All of a sudden, out of the trees in front of us, a thin, high, trembling voice struck up, the well-known air and words. 15 men on the dead man's chest. Yo, ho, ho, and a bottle of rum. I never have seen men more dreadfully affected. The color went from their 6 faces. Some leaped to their feet. Some clawed hold of others. Morgan grovelled on the ground. It's Flint, cried Mary. The song stopped suddenly, broken off in the middle of the note, as though someone had laid his hand upon the singer's mouth. Come, said Silver, struggling to get the word out. This is someone playing a joke. His courage and color came back as he spoke. The others were coming a little to themselves. when the same voice broke out again, not singing, but in a faint, distant hail that echoed yet fainter among the clefts of the spyglass. "Darby McGraw," it wailed. "Darby McGraw," again, and again, and again, then rising a little higher, and with an oath, "Fetch aft the rum, Darby." Here's a little depiction of what's taking place. It looks like someone is hiding in the tree saying these things to the pirates down below. All right, let's continue to read. The buccaneers' eyes bulged in their heads. Long after the voice had died away, they stared in silence before them. "That fixes it," gasped one. "Let's go." "They was his last words," moaned Morgan. Dick had his Bible out and was praying. Still Silver was unconquered. I could hear his teeth rattle in his head, but he had not yet surrendered. "Shipmates," he cried, "I'm here to get that stuff, and I'll not be beat by my man nor devil. I never was feared of Flint in his life, and I'll face him dead. There's 700,000 pound, not a quarter of a mile from here. When did ever a gentleman of fortune show his stern to that much dollars for a drunken old seaman with a blue face? And him." All right, so I'm going to pause really quick. We talked about this before. A gentleman of fortune is another saying for a pirate, because pirates have to, work for their fortune and their money, right? They weren't born with money. They gain their money through being pirates. All right, so, and him, dead too. "Stop, John," said Mary. "Don't you cross a spirit." And the rest were all too terrified to reply. They would have run away had they dared, but fear kept them together. "Spirit? Well, maybe," he said. "But there's one thing not clear to me. There was an echo. No man ever seen a spirit with a shadow. Well, what's he doing with an echo to him? I should like to know. That ain't in nature, surely." This argument seemed weak to me, but you can never tell what will affect the superstitious, and, to my wonder, George Mary was relieved. "Well, that's so," he said. "'Bout shipmates, this here crew is on a wrong tack, I do believe. And come to think on it, it was like somebody else's voice now. It was like—" "Ben Gunn!" roared Silver. "It don't make much difference, do it?" asked Dick. "Ben Gunn's not here, any more Flint." But the older hands greeted this with scorn. "Why, nobody's minds Ben Gunn," cried Mary. "Dead or alive, nobody minds him." It was extraordinary how their spirits had returned. Soon they shouldered the tools and set forth again, Mary walking first with Silver's compass to keep them on the right line with Skeleton Island. Dick still held his Bible and looked behind him as he went with fearful glances. "I told you," said Silver. "You had spoiled your Bible. If it ain't no good to swear by it, what do you suppose the spirit would give for it? Not that." And he snapped his big fingers. Indeed, Dick was falling sick, hastened by heat, exhaustion, and fear. The fever predicted by Dr. Livesey was growing swiftly higher. The first of all the tall trees was reached, and by the bearing proved the wrong one. So with the second, the third rose nearly 200 feet into the air above a clump of underwood. But it was not its size that impressed my companions. It was the knowledge that gold lay somewhere buried below its spreading shadow. The thought of the money swallowed up their previous terrors. Their feet grew speedier and lighter. Each of their souls was bound up in that fortune, that lifetime of extravagance and pleasure that lay waiting there for each of them. Silver hobbled, grunting on his crutch. He plucked furiously at the line that held me to him, and turned his eyes upon me with a deadly look. He took no pains to hide his thoughts. In the nearness of the gold, all had been forgotten. His promise and the doctor's warning were both things of the past. I did not doubt that he hoped to seize the treasure, board the Hispaniola, cut every honest throat on the island, and sail away laden with crimes and riches. Shaken as I was, it was hard to keep up with the rapid pace of the treasure hunters. Now and again I stumbled, and it was then that Silver plucked so roughly at the rope and launched at his murderous glances. Dick, who had dropped behind us, was babbling to himself both prayers and curses as his fever kept rising. We were now at the margin of the thicket, and the foremost broke into a run. Suddenly, 10 yards further, we saw them stop. A low cry arose. Silver doubled his pace, digging away with his crutch like one possessed, and the next moment we also came to a halt. Before us was a great excavation, not very recent, for the sides had fallen in and grass had sprouted. All right, so excavation, meaning someone was digging there. They dug up the earth. They excavated, they dug it up. So it was recent, not like the day before, because grass had started to grow, but within the year, probably. Hey, Scotland, glad you're here. All right, so let's continue to read. In it were the shaft of a pick broke in two and boards strewn around. One board I saw the name Walrus. That was Flint's ship. The cash had been found and rifled. The 700,000 pounds were gone. What happened to the treasure? So it was dug up, it seems like, and someone already took it. All right, so again, I'll remind you that the questions for chapter 32 and now chapter 33 are down below in the description. So you can scroll down in the description and look over the questions that you will be asked to answer in your chapter study questions. Again, you won't be asked to answer all of them, but some of the questions are pulled from those question banks down below. Okay, so let's continue to read. We just found out that they got to the site of the treasure, and it's been dug up and it's gone. So we wonder, again, we know that the map was given to Long John Silver, not in the last chapter, but in previous chapters that we read. So we wonder, why was the map given back to Long John Silver? That's interesting. All right, so chapter 33, the fall of a chieftain. Each of these 6 men seemed struck by a blow, but with Silver the blow passed almost instantly. His every thought had been set like a racer on that money. Now he was brought up dead, and he kept his head and changed his plan before the others had time to realize the disappointment. "Jim," he whispered, "stand by for trouble." And he passed me a double-barreled pistol. At the same time, in a few steps, he had put the hollow between us two and the other 5. So he put the dug-up treasure between so the treasure, the hole is in the middle between Silver, Jim, and the 5 other pirates. All right. Then he looked at me and nodded quite friendly. I was so revolted at these constant changes that I could not resist whispering, "So you've changed sides again?" There was no time left for him to answer. The buccaneers, with oaths, began to leap into the pit and dig with their fingers. Morgan found a piece of gold and held it up. 2 guineas, roared Mary, shaking it at Silver. "That's your 700,000 pounds, is it? You're the man for bargains, ain't you? You wooden-headed lubber." There we stood, 2 on one side, 5 on the other, the pit between us, and nobody ready to offer the first blow. Silver never moved. He watched them, very upright on his crutch, and looked as cool as ever I saw him. He was brave. "Mates," says Mary at last, "there's 2 of them. One's the old cripple that brought us here and blooded us down to this. The other's the cub that I mean to have the heart of. Now, mates." He was raising his arm and plainly meant to lead a charge. Then, crack, 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 3 musket shots flashed out of the thicket. Mary tumbled headfirst into the excavation. The man with the bandage spun like a top and fell dead, but still twitching, and the other 3 turned and ran for it with all their might. All right, here's a little depiction about what took place. You have Silver and Jim on this right side. Right here in the middle is the excavation, the hole that was dug where the treasure was. It's like Mary is down there in the pit, and the 4 others right here, the one with the bandage, right before they got shot. Or maybe this is right where Mary got shot. All right, let's continue to read. Before you could wink, Long John had fired 2 barrels into the struggling Mary, as the man rolled up his eyes at him in the last agony. "George," said Silver, "I reckon I settled you." Yeah, hey, Scotland. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me, Scotland. I saw that you're here, and I said hi a few minutes ago. I hope that the stream is working this time. It didn't work yesterday. Okay, perfect. You can. Awesome. Glad to have you here. Hope you're excited for a great day of school, but I don't want to get off track, so I'm going to get back to the book, all right? Okay. At the same moment, The doctor, Gray, and Ben Gunn joined us with smoking muskets from among the nutmeg trees. "Forward!" cried the doctor. "Double quick, my lads! We must head 'em off the boats!" And we set off at a great pace. The work Silver went through, leaping on his crutch till the muscles of his chest were fit to burst, was work no man ever equaled, so said the doctor. "Doctor," he hailed, "see there? No hurry." Sure enough, in a more open part of the plateau, we could see the 3 survivors still running in the same direction as they had started. We were already between them and the boats. We 4 sat down to breathe, while Long John, mopping his face, came slowly up with us. "Thank ye kindly, doctor," says he. "You came in the nick of time, I guess, for me and Hawkins. And so it's you, Ben Gunn," he added. "I'm Ben Gunn, I am," replied the maroon, wriggling like an eel in his embarrassment. "And," he added, how do, Mr. Silver?" Ben," murmured Silver, "to think as you've done me." The doctor sent Gray for a pickaxe left by the mutineers, and then as we proceeded down to the boats, related what had taken place. It was a story that profoundly interested Silver, and Ben Gunn, the maroon, was the hero. Ben, in his lonely wanderings about the island, had found the skeleton. It was he that stole from it. He had found the treasure, and he had dug it up. He had carried it on his back in many weary journeys from the foot of the tall pine to a cave where it had lain, stored in safety since before the arrival of the Hispaniola. So we learned that Ben Gunn found the treasure. He dug it up and moved it to a cave, and it took many hard-working, he says, weary journeys, so very hard, tiresome journeys. And he did all this before before Jim Hawkins and Silver and the captain and all of them arrived on the Hispaniola to the island. All right, let's continue to read. The doctor had wormed this secret from Ben on the day of the attack. The next morning, when he saw the anchorage deserted, he had gone to Silver, given him the chart, which was now useless, and the stores. For Ben Gunn's cave was well supplied with salt, goat's meat, given everything to get a chance of moving in safety from the stockade to the 2-pointed hill to be clear of malaria and keep a guard on the money. "As for you, Jim," he said, "I did what I could for those who had stood by their duty. If you were not one of these, whose fault was it?" That morning, finding that I was to be involved in the horrid disappointment he had prepared for the mutineers, he had run to the cave, and leaving the squire to guard the captain, had taken Gray and the maroon, and started across the island to be at hand beside the pine. When he saw that our party was ahead of him, Ben Gunn was dispatched, alone to work upon the superstitions of his former shipmates. He was so successful that Gray and the doctor were in ambush before the arrival of the treasure hunters. "Ah," said Silver, "it were fortunate that I had Hawkins here. You would have let old John be cut to bits, and never given it a thought." "Not a thought," replied Dr. Livesey. By this time we reached the gigs. The doctor with the pickaxe demolished one, and then we all got aboard the other and set out for North Inlet. This was a run of 8 or 9 miles. Silver, though he was almost killed already with fatigue, set to an oar like the rest of us, and we were soon skimming swiftly over a smooth sea. As we passed the 2-pointed hill, we could see the black mouth of Ben Gunn's cave and the squire standing by. Leaning on a musket, we waved a handkerchief and gave him 3 cheers, in which Silver joined as heartily as any. Just inside the mouth of North Inlet, we met the Hispaniola, cruising by herself. The last flood had lifted her, and had there been much wind or a strong tide, we should never have found her, or found her stranded beyond help. As it was, there was little amiss. Another anchor was got ready and dropped in a fathom of water. All right, that's a vocabulary word right there. Fathom means a measurement of 6 feet. So the anchor was ready and dropped in about 6 feet of water. We all pulled round again to Rum Cove, the nearest point for Ben Gunn's treasure house. Then Gray returned with the gig to the Hispaniola, where he was to pass the night on guard. At the entrance of the cave, the squire met us. To me he was cordial, saying nothing of my escapade. At Silver's salute he had changed color. "John Silver," he said, "you're a villain. I am told not to prosecute you. Well, then, I will not, but the dead men, sir, hang about your neck." "Thank you kindly, sir," replied Long John. "I dare you to thank me," cried the squire. "It is a gross neglect of my duty. Stand back." And then we entered the cave. It was a large, airy place, with a little spring and a pool of clear water overhung with ferns. The floor was sand. Before a big fire lay Captain Smollett, and in a far corner in the flickering light I beheld heaps of coin and stacks of gold bars. That was Flint's treasure that we had come so far to seek, and that had cost already the lives of 17 men. How many it had cost in the amassing, what blood and sorrow, what good ships scuttled, what shame and lies and cruelty, perhaps no man alive could tell. Yet there were still 3 upon that island, Silver, Morgan, and Ben Gunn, who had each a share in these crimes, as each had hoped in vain to share in the reward. "Come in, Jim," said the captain. "You're a good boy in your line, Jim, but I don't think you and me will go to sea again." "Is that you, John Silver? What brings you here?" "Come back to do my duty, sir." "Ah," was all the captain said. What a supper I had that night, with all my friends around me, and what a meal it was, with Ben Gunn's salted goat, some delicacies, and a bottle of old wine from the Hispaniola. Never, am I sure, were people happier. Silver sat back almost out of the firelight, eating heartily, even joining quietly in our laughter, the same polite, obsequious seamen of the voyage out. All right, so chapter 34, our last chapter. All right, so let's just continue to dive in. Let's find out how this story ends, how this crazy adventure comes to a close. And again, I'll remind you that the chapter study questions are down in the description of this video, so you can scroll down, open up the description, and see the chapter questions from 32 all the way here to 34 to help you be prepared for your chapter study question quiz. All right, chapter 34, the last chapter, and last is the chapter title. The next morning, we fell to work early, for the transportation of this great mass of gold near a mile by land to the beach, and then 3 miles by boat to the Hispaniola, was a considerable task for us. The 3 fellows still aboard upon the island did not trouble us. Therefore, the work pushed on briskly. Gray and Ben Gunn came and went with the boat, while the rest piled treasure on the beach. 2 of the bars slung in a rope made a good load for a grown man. I was busy all day in the cave, packing money into bread bags. It was a strange collection of coins. Doubloons, double guineas, moidores, and sequins, the pictures of all the kings of Europe for the last 100 years. Strange oriental pieces stamped with what looked like bits of spiderwebs, round pieces and square pieces, and pieces bored through the middle, as if to wear them around your neck. All right, I want to point out that pieces bored through the middle. So bored means there was a hole in the middle. And what have we learned in this first quarter of school that had coins that had a hole in the middle? Where did we learn that? We learned it in history, in the dynasties of China. During our first chapter with Shi Huangdi, the first emperor, he unified China by creating a unified written language and also a unified currency. And that currency had coins with holes in the middle. So maybe these pirates had coins from the first emperor in that era. Okay, so let's continue to read this last little half of the sentence. So nearly every variety of money in the world, I think. Day after day this work went on, and all this time we heard nothing of the 3 mutineers. At last, I think it was on the 3rd night, the doctor and I were strolling on the shoulder of the hill where it overlooks the lowlands of the isle, when from out of the darkness below the wind brought us a noise between shrieking and singing. That's right, Scotland, like buttons. Yeah, buttons have holes in the middle. Some have, like if I'm looking at my button right now, it has 4 holes. 4 button that's been bored out 4 times. All right, here's a depiction of Jim putting all the coins in those bags. All right, let's continue to read. Heaven forgive them, said the doctor. All drunk, sir, added Silver. Silver, I should say, was allowed his liberty, and in spite of daily rebuffs, seemed to regard himself once more as a privileged dependent. Indeed, it was remarkable how well he bore these slights, and with unwariness, politeness, he kept trying to ingratiate himself. So ingratiate means they didn't look highly of Silver because of all that he did, but he was trying to gain favor among the others. And so that's what it means, ingratiate. He's trying to gain favor among the others. Yet none treated him better than a dog, unless it was Ben Gunn, who was still afraid of his old quartermaster, or me, who really had something to thank him for, although, I suppose, I had reason to think even worse of him than anybody else, for I had seen him meditating a fresh treachery on the plateau. That was about the last news we had of the 3 pirates. Once we heard a gunshot away off and supposed them to be hunting. A council was held, and it was decided that we must desert them on the island, or maroon them, right? To the glee of Ben Gunn. We left them a good stock of powder and shot, the bulk of the salt goat, a few medicines, and some other necessaries. Tools, clothing, a spare nail, a fathom or 2 of rope, so 6 feet is a fathom, right? 6 feet or 2, so 6 to 12 feet of rope, and by the desire of the doctor, a handsome present of tobacco. At last, one fine morning, we weighed anchor and stood out on North Inlet, the same colors flying that the captain had flown and fought under at the palisade. Coming through the narrows, we saw all 3 mutineers kneeling together on a spit of sand, with their arms raised. It went to all our hearts, I think, to leave them in that wretched state, but we could not risk another mutiny, and to take them home for the gallows would have been a cruel sort of kindness. The doctor hailed them and told them where to find the stores we had left, but they continued to call us by name and appealed to us not to leave them to die. At last, seeing the ship still bore her course, one of them leapt to his feet with a hoarse cry, whipped his musket to his shoulder, and sent a shot, whistling over Silver's head. After that, we kept under cover of the bulwarks, and when next I looked out, they had disappeared from the spit, and the spit itself had almost melted out of sight. That was the end of that, and before noon, to my joy, the highest rock of Treasure Island had sunk into the sea. We were short of men that everyone had to bear a hand, only the captain lying on a mattress in the stern and giving his orders. We laid her head for the nearest point in Spanish America, for we could not risk the voyage home without fresh hands. As it was, we were worn out before we reached it. It was sundown when we cast anchor in a most beautiful landlocked gulf. We were immediately surrounded by boats full of native people selling fruits and vegetables, and offering to die for bits of money. The sight of so many good-humored faces, the taste of tropical fruits, and, above all, the lights that began to shine in the town, made a charming contrast to our dark and bloody sojourn on the island. The doctor and the squire, taking me along, went ashore, where they met the captain of an English man-o'-war and boarded his ship. Day was breaking when we came back alongside the Hispaniola. Ben Gunn was on deck alone, and as soon as we came on board, he made a confession. Silver was gone. Ben Gunn had aided his escape in a shore boat some hours ago, and now assured us he had done so to preserve our lives. But this was not all. The sea cook had taken one of the sacks of coin, worth perhaps 300 or 400 guineas. I think we were all pleased to be so cheaply quit of him. Well, to make a long story short, we got a few hands on board, made a good cruise home, and reached Bristol just as Mr. Blandley was beginning to think of sending the rescue boat. All of us had an ample share of the treasure and used it wisely or foolishly according to our natures. Captain Smollett retired from the sea. Gray studied his profession, and he is now mate and part owner of a fine, full-rigged ship. He is married besides, and the father of a family. As for Ben Gunn, he got £1,000, which he spent or lost in 19 days, for he was back begging on the 20th. Then he was given a lodge to keep. He is a great favorite, though, and is a notable singer in church on Sundays and Saints' Day. Of Silver we have heard no more. That formidable man with one leg has at last gone clean out of my life. I dare say he met his wife, or perhaps still lives in comfort with her and Captain Flint. It is to be hoped so, for his chances of comfort in another world are very small. The bar of silver and the arms still lie, for all that I know, where Flint buried them. Nothing could bring me back again to that accursed island. The worst dreams I ever have are where I hear the surf booming about its coast, or when I start upright in bed with the voice of Captain Flint ringing in my ears. Pieces of 8, Pieces of 8. Well, that is it. So you say, do you know how they say Spanish in their language? Española? Espanol? Right? Is that what you're asking, Scotland? All right, well, that is it, everybody. That is Treasure Island. You can go on and read a little bit more about the author, Robert Louis Stevenson. But that is it. Hope you all enjoyed that book. I really enjoyed reading it, and I enjoyed reading it with you all. It was awesome to have you guys come into the live readings and interact and talk about how exciting and crazy this adventure was. But that's it. I got to get ready to go to school, so I'm going to end the stream. It was awesome to have you here, Scotland. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope the rest of you that are watching the replay enjoyed it. And I will catch you guys in the next live lesson. Have a great day. You guys are the best.